Welcome to a new episode of Manage to Retain, where I talk about issues around business for employees, your customers, recruiting, retention, productivity, and profitability. And I do it with my friends, Sherri and Lou. Listen in, you might get a few tips here on how to do leadership better in your business.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of Manage to Retain. Managing and running as a leader, running a company these days seems to be even more difficult than it's ever been. There are more things to consider, more things to know about and be aware of. So myself, Vinay Raman, I run a company that's about data and analytics. So we take the business data in so you can see what's happening with your employees and what's happening with your business and with your customers through visualizations. But I do this with my friends Sherri and Lou, so you get a sense of how, as a leader, you can step into that leadership role to take yourself to that next intentional level of success. Sherri and Lou, how y'all doing today?
Doing great, Vinay. How are you?
I'm super. I like for you guys to tell everyone what you guys do, just so they get a clear image of how you guys come in and help companies.
Mm-hmm. Well, we assist you with taking people where they are and looking at where you want them to be in comparison to where your profitability needs to be or where your success in your company needs to be, and matching those levels up. Because you see, we help level up your employees and yourself to do that in order to get them to where they want to be. So that's ultimately what we do, is we work with you to make sure that everyone is in line with your mission, but specifically how you can use your leverage as a leader to be able to get that job done.
Thank you. I appreciate you clarifying that. I don't know if I would do such a good job. I get a felt sense of what you guys do. You guys are a nice complement. We do the data and analytics side, the hard stuff, you all, the numbers. You guys do the culture fit, making sure that the culture actually works the way it's supposed to, building the intentional culture. Is that a fair way to say that?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
So for anybody who may be listening in for the first time, or if you've listened before, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. What I would like to hear is, what is it that you saw about this podcast or in the title of this Manage to Retain episode? What is it that brought you here? I'd like to hear maybe a word or two. What are the words that resonate most with you that brought you forward? And I would love to see what that is. But Sherri and Lou, today what I want to focus on is this idea of the relationship between managers and employees is probably as important as it's ever been. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you think about especially where we are today in our current society and our current culture, that is absolutely something that needs to really regain focus. Is what are we doing? Who are we as a leader, and what is it that we're doing to bring in and draw in the right people and keep them?
Yeah, and if I will tell you, if I go to a physician, a doctor, he or she is probably going to run some diagnostic tests on me to really understand kind of where I am. And that kind of gives you a sense of, hey, you've got COVID, you don't have COVID. I mean, it kind of gives you some sense of maybe relief or some, that's what I've been feeling all this time. That's what's going on, right? It kind of just gives you a sense of where you are, so then you can take some action. And I feel like a lot of companies don't have that diagnostic tool set to tell how that relationship between employees and managers is working. Have you all witnessed that as well? Is that a fair statement as well?
There's always a gap between that.
Yeah. Well, because where do you start? It's always when we go in and say, well, we ask questions. They'll come to us as an example and say, we need to come in and do some communication training with our team.
Yeah.
Simple enough, right? Yeah. But realistically, okay, well, that's no problem. We can certainly do that. But what happened? What caused you to call? So we got to ask all these different questions to really get to the root. And then even when we realize, well, maybe it's not communication that you need. Maybe it's conflict resolution that you need, right? But depending on what's happening. And so you're right that there's none of this dartboard style diagnostic tool, right? That we can use that says, oh, there it is. This is exactly what we need. But that's until now.
Well, so that's I think you're alluding to where we're going to go next, right? Which is Sherri, Lou, and myself have built a diagnostic tool. I think it was Peter Drucker who once said, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. Touchy-feely, I think that's why a lot of people shy away from the touchy-feely stuff, is because you can't measure, you can't put your finger on it. So working with Sherri and Lou, we've created an assessment here where you can take what might be that touchy-feely stuff and make it quantifiable, where you can take a look at it. So what I'd like to share is anybody who's listening in, you'll start to see an assessment that we have created. You're more than welcome to take this. You would just have to type in assessment into the comments, and we'll actually send you this assessment so you can take it for your organization. Let me share my screen here so you all can see what this looks like. And what I would love to hear for anybody who's listening in, I would love to hear what kind of appears to you as you're seeing this. Does this give you some clarity quickly? So let me orient you to what's happening here. We've created this company where we've changed some of the names, and we've changed the name of the company and the employees. We call it Fictional Pest Control Company. And Fictional Pest Control Company has an employee with the initials AD. But the average, and here's a list of all of those people at Fictional Pest. The average employee at Fictional Pest, on a scale of 1 to 100 on their employee to manager assessment, scored a 53. That's the average. This particular employee, AD, the employee with the initials AD, got a 64. Now, that's 53 out of 100 or 64 out of 100. So AD in this case is slightly higher than the average. What you can see here is this blue area. And that blue area tells you how AD answers the questions and how they feel. Bigger is better. So you want this whole graph, this whole circular area filled in blue. And the gray tells you the average. So shows you how AD compares to the average and how much room there is for potential opportunity for improvement. And it kind of walks you through each one of these different areas of where they feel very good and not so good. Sherri and Lou, I felt like I did a lot of the talking there and introducing that. Do you all feel like walking through maybe some of these questions that you created and how or what they're assessing here?
Sure. The one thing to take note of is that while this is obviously a scoring methodology we're looking at here, this isn't how effective this person specifically is themselves in leading. This is the score that they have received based upon that they basically given to their supervisor. This is their manager score to their manager, their supervisor, based upon their current how they feel and what they've been aware of and what they're experiencing. Right, that's important for us to understand. So in realistic, the average score for this particular supervisor with all these individuals taking this is 53. Okay, so I'm assuming we can all agree that perhaps this supervisor is going to need some work. Considering it's a 53 out of 100. Realistically, we don't want an average person leading the pack. Right. We want someone who is well above that. But this is going to give us very, very specific bird's eye view into the minds and experiences of our employees. So in this case, take an example. My manager or supervisor allows me to do my job as I feel best. So independence and trust. Okay, so they scored that very high, so they feel very confident. Now, if that was really low, we'd know that there may be a trust concern with that employee. And if multiple employees gauge that low, we might have a situation where maybe it's not the employee specifically that feels that way, but it actually is leadership. So what these begin to do is tell us a story of the experiences of this employee, which is the only way we're going to gauge an idea or knowledge of where we're going to be able to focus ourselves as a leader to improve performance overall.
So the story that's playing out here is what is in the mind of that employee or their perception of that manager from that employee. Mm-hmm. And these green areas are the places where they feel that they're highly effective as a manager. Mm-hmm. These yellows are where they feel like they're more middling. And these areas with the red tell you where that employee believes that there might be some room for improvement. Or maybe back to your point a little bit here, it's just a communication gap that's just not occurring because they're just not seeing eye to eye on that particular topic. It doesn't necessarily mean anybody's wrong. It just that they're speaking Greek to each other.
Where's the alignment, right?
Right.
In technology, there's a great analogy I like to use with this is in technology, there's different types of communication methods, physical communication methods and connection methods in order to get the internet or television, right, or cable or satellite. So there's like coaxial, which we're used to, right, where you have the regular cable connector, but then there's a fiber optic connection. Now, fiber optic is made with very, very thin layers of glass or this specialized type of plastic that uses the speed of light. It uses light for communication. There is a tool that needs to be put in place in order to splice those together if it goes long distances. Very different type of different way of doing things as opposed to using a coaxial or regular wire. If those wires are just misaligned every so much, just a thin hair, almost microscopically misaligned, that light cannot pass all the way through, and then there is a misalignment and miscommunication. There's interference. There's all this other challenges with that type of connection. Same thing happens here, and what this does is provides us that alignment, so we can see all the way through where the challenges really are. And as a leader, even if it's us, we should be okay with saying, man, I have work to do. That's the difference between a successful leader and a non-successful leader is one that says, I've got work to do.
So I would love to hear from anybody who's listening in. Being able to mark this as red, yellow, or green, yellow, red, as we go down the list, is that clear to you where that misalignment in communication is? Where is that gap in that splice of the wires where that communication is not quite making the leap? Because here down at the bottom, we see that my manager supervisor values my input and perspective. A low score, the average is a 49, and this particular employee gave it a 10. But what the supervisor does very effectively, based on this employee's responses, creates clear goals, allows me to do my best, is a highly effective leader, and models how to work effectively with others. So I get the sense that this is a leader who probably has lots of experience, has tried to bring some best practices to the table, but may not necessarily be reaching to this employee at the level that they need individualized attention. Is that a fair way to say that?
I think it's a great awareness. It brings us to that, like, well, okay, it's not necessarily the fact that the leader is a terrible leader. It's like, okay, well, and that's really never the case. It's always, I mean, not to say I've never experienced people that were terrible leaders. It's not, because we all do, but there's room for improvement and work. There's always something good. And like you're saying, where can we then take and align this? You can see the misalignment, the green, yellow, red. There's that misalignment that just needs a little bit of adjustment. And like you said, it gives us that view of the experience of the employee that just might say, maybe there's just a little bit more need for some type of communication or mission alignment or something along those lines, or a different way of communicating than what we're doing now.
I'd be curious for anybody listening if the thought that comes to mind as you were saying that, Lou, is just this idea that maybe this is a junior employee, right? They don't actually know. They might be their first job out of school. So while they see the environment that's very supportive, they don't feel that support individually. They feel it's a supportive environment. They just haven't quite jived it. So it doesn't necessarily mean that the leader is bad or ineffective. It may just mean, again, that the communication between the two is not established in the most optimal way yet.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, exactly. And then it helps us save really good employees instead of just assuming that they're not doing their job effectively. This gives the exact location of where that misalignment is. Then all we've got to do, perhaps in this case, is meet with this particular employee, meet with AD and say, hey, let's talk about this a little bit and have clear-cut instruction. Oh, you need to be told this way. Okay, so texting's not good. You like me calling you. Okay, I got it. We fix that, and all of a sudden this employee, then that blue just goes, expands out. Now we've got an employee that we want everyone to model. See, but now we know where to go with this.
So I want to switch to a new graph and look at another employee and see what they said about their manager. But I'd like to ask a question of everybody. By seeing this kind of information, does it make more clear to you how you can take action and be intentional in changing the organization potentially as a leader or as an employee when you have this data in front of you. What I'm looking for is a yes or no. Can you see that clarity of action that you can take? Let me flip to another person. I'm going to pick someone here. I'm going to take a look at MZ. All right, so we got a different type of person here. Manager allows me to do my job as I feel best. Manager supervisor creates clear goals for our group. On the other end of the spectrum, my manager supervisor is a highly effective leader. What kind of story do you think is coming up for you here? And a lot of other stuff is sort of middling there.
Yeah. And again, I think we're right back kind of where we begin is in order to really get the finale of any stories, we've got to talk to this employee and identify what their experience is. Again, this is their bird's eye view into their experience of what they're experiencing here specifically. And my manager supervisor is obviously not highly effective as a leader. So their perception of this leader is not good. They're not looking at them as a leader, which maybe they're looking at them as a friend.
You know, I remember one of my first jobs when I was 16 was working at Kmart. I was hired as a high-priced stock boy. Actually, I wasn't high-priced because I didn't make a lot of money. But I do remember that lots of times I would ask my boss, who is this 35-year-old guy, and I know I was a real royal pain in the butt because I was always asking him, why are you doing that? I was always trying to learn. And he got frustrated with me all the time. He's just Vinay, just get it done. Stop asking questions all the time. And I'm listening to you talk about this. I was like, oh, this might have been me. Because I don't think they're effective because they're not explaining to me, because that's what I want. I want my questions answered. I'm just a super curious person. And as a result, I'm dinging them in terms of my impression of how good a leader they are because they're not suiting my style.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
That is fair, but you see, and interestingly enough, is like you didn't see that really until now, years later, that like, oh wait, yeah, he was actually probably a pretty good leader. I just didn't see, and that's really what it comes down to is and that's what this tells us is, and I think that's a question too for the audience to think about is why is this important? Why so as a leader, it's like, well, that's a very weird question. My manager supervisor is a highly effective leader. Well, if they're mad at me today, they're going to say no. Well, here's the thing. I have had leaders that I have not necessarily thought that they were the best person. Maybe I didn't agree with them. But how they handled and managed things made me feel like they're effective. Yeah. So the perception is everything. Your employees, if they don't perceive you as being an effective leader, whether it's true or not true, the perception is what's going to drive results. People are we're emotional beings. We forget this. We're emotional beings. That's when you look at these questions, they're like, why are these things almost seem very emotional? Well, because they are. We are emotional beings. We drive on emotion. We perform on emotion. We overperform on emotion. It'd be very different if you came in here and said, I don't know why everyone's here today, but I'm here anyway. So sit your butt down and we're going to get through this. And by the way, don't, rush out of here. There's a different approach. And all of a sudden people come. And that's what it's about. It's just understanding that we are emotional beings. We're not logical, no matter how hard we try, Vinay. We're not naturally logical beings. We'll always judge based on emotion. And so we've got to look at that perception and realize that this could seriously affect our bottom line. And it could be very simple fix, but we have to respect the fact that their opinion here is that this manager is not effective.
I'm going to stop sharing here. And before that, I do want to ask the audience, anybody who's listening, one last question is, you saw that first graph, we saw that individual AD, and we see this person MZ, and we see kind of two different personalities showing up. My question to you is, by seeing these different personalities, can you see, is it clearer to you, do you have more resolution on how you can respond to people differently and how they have different perceptions of the same exact leader? And I'm looking for a yes or no, because I believe that's what this allows you to do, is to quickly and use that diagnostic tool, going back to that doctor, get a diagnostic on how people perceive that leader so that they can create that alignment, that congruence, so they can move forward together more effectively.
Yeah.
Sherri and Lou, we saw a couple of things there. Take home messages. What would you, for people, if someone in the audience saw this and like, hey, this is slick stuff, I would love to do this with my organization. We'll put this assessment in the chat so that people can, or in the comments, so that they can try it themselves. What would you ask somebody to do if they got these results in the organization?
Call us. That's what you do, because, and it's like anything else, right? It's like anything else. It's just like, okay, we've got these results. What do we do with this? Yeah. Okay, you can identify how to fix it. Great example. I am not an HVAC guy. I don't fix heating, air conditioning units. I can troubleshoot things very well and kind of pinpoint where the problems might be, because I'm a mechanical kind of person, but I don't fix that stuff.
Yeah.
Our air conditioning went out here a few weeks ago, right? Well, I diagnosed it. I'm not going out there pulling that thing apart and looking. I don't do that. I can get the results. I have diagnostic tools, and I can test it and I get the results. But then I call up the person that can bring the solution in with the results that I've given them. So that's exactly what this is. This is results driven. Now what we do is we bring in the solution so that it can be maintained and something that you can do consistently over time.
I'd like you to mention the 10 principles, because once you come into an organization, there are 10 principles that you leave behind that leaders can use to lead with influence.
Yeah.
Can you talk about those principles and how you might be able to take something like this to give those principles to a leader so they can run more effectively?
No, thank you for mentioning that, Vinay. The 10 principles that every leader must follow to lead with influence are 10 principles that Sherri and I and our team have developed over the last 5 decades, that we've realized through our experience, through our training, and this is not stuff that's magically, we've never heard this stuff before, just as much as we heard this is a different way to use light. Well, we know light bulbs have been invented for centuries, but there's different ways to utilize it. So this is what these 10 principles are. And these 10 principles will give the kind of a guiding point as a leader on what we can do. And in this case, what we need to do is a couple things we need to do is the others principle and the willing principle are the 2 principles that I think are really focal point on this. I'm not sure if you agree with that or not, but the others principle, just right off the bat, it's not about us as leaders. It's about them. It's about those that we lead. And if we look at it from that perspective, that every day, today's not about me, it's about them, then we will be willing and drawn into this type of an assessment, this type of way to find out from our employees on a holistic way, where is the challenge? And if it points back to us, that's okay. We want it, because if you think about it, if we accept that responsibility, that's an easy solution. It's a more difficult solution if we have 25 employees and all 25 of them are the problem. That's a more difficult problem to have. And I'll tell you that is a very rare condition. It doesn't usually happen that way. The other principle is the willing principle. We need to be willing to be like that, to be, you know what, our opinions are important, but realistically, everything that we think, including ego, is molded from the outside world, the things that we've experienced through our own worldview. We've got to be willing to experience the possibilities, to step outside of that view and realize, okay, I'm taking responsibility here and I'm going to make this right. And I'm going to find a way to help our employees to be better so they can actually nail the bottom line. If it means I got to go in and say, it's me, it's all me, I'm going to fix me. Let's fix me and let's make it better.
Well, Sherri and Lou, as always, I appreciate your time and walking through this with me. I believe there's a lot here. One final question for everyone in the audience. I'm a data guy. I love my numbers. Consider one is a rating of needs lots of improvement. 10 is highly useful. And what I'm talking about is this episode and the time we spent here walking through this in these graphs. Was this a 10, highly effective and useful for your time, or was it a 1? Needs a lot of improvement. I'd love to see that in your comments. That'll help us understand more how to tune this. But thank you for taking some time and listening to us. And Sherri and Lou, thanks.
Take care, everyone.